Men, if this past week has not clearly demonstrated that you should be armed, I don't know what will. And I'm talking about the week of Charlie Kirk, the week of the poor young Ukrainian girl on the train, the school shooting in Colorado. Like, what else needs to jar you out of walking around blind to the violence around us? What else? What would it take? If that last week didn't do that, I don't know what will. Now, today's topic, last time I checked in the Patreon poll, I put out a bunch of episode ideas. The one that was winning was a talk about 9mm handguns, kind of germane to the opening there, in the different tier levels, like top tier, creme de la creme, down to the budget 9mm, ones to go with, maybe ones to stay away from. What are the different tiers of 9mm handgun, from the cream of the crop to the budget? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. Bio, bullet points in the show notes: military, law enforcement, private contracting, state rifle and pistol champion, professional firearms instructor, etc. As you might imagine, I know my way around a 9mm handgun by God's grace. He's allowed me to do all those things. I'm very thankful for that, and I try and share those blessings with you. 9mm handguns are the de facto handguns of our day. You can like that or not like that. I'm not going to spend today debating on, why you're delusional thinking the 40 is a good caliber. We're going to dive right into the 9mm and 9mm handguns and a fighting handgun. I'm not going to waste time today on little baby micro 9s. I'm not going to waste time today on little teeny tiny, oh look, I also have a handgun kind of handgun. I'm just talking about man-size fighting handguns, like actual handguns that you can get a full hand grip on. Not a two-finger gun, not a pinky gun, not a gun that you have like a security blankie that makes you feel safe because you have a gun. Like guns that actually work, guns that you can actually fight with, fighting handguns. Okay, let's take it from the top. Staccato 2011, and the only one that I really like that I would recommend if you're going to get one, get the XL. And it's not extra large, it's a normal size. It's a normal size 1911. It's like a real size handgun with a 5-inch barrel. The other ones are compacts. I don't know why they made their standard the compact. I don't know, but I have several from before they were Staccato, back when they were STI, and back before they were very, very expensive. They were very expensive then. Now they're very, very expensive. As soon as John Wick used one in a movie, Keanu Reeves, whatever, I was running mine before that. But when he started using them in a movie, they skyrocketed in price and popularity. But I knew about them long before that. They were good guns long before that. They are probably the best fighting handgun for CONUS operations, continental United States, period. They are crazy expensive. I don't think they're overpriced. I think they're very good. They come with all the quirks of running high-end 1911s. They have a lot of small moving parts. They like to be maintained. They're going to require more maintenance, which is still not a lot, but more maintenance than something like a Glock. But they are the Cadillac. They are the, McLaren of handguns. They're fast, they're accurate, they're reliable, they're proven. They're also going to run you, $4,000, maybe more. But they are the best fighting handgun for, U.S. operations, for operating inside the U.S. in most environments. They're the best. They're not overpriced. Now, if you think that you're going to get some nasty Turkish copy of a 2011 for, under $1,000, and that sounds too good to be true, it's because it is. Yeah, if you want a gun that's perpetually in its break-in period, it only malfunctioned 3 times this magazine, it's fine. It's fine. If you want a gun that looks like a 2011 to shoot at the range, That's fine. If you want a gun to fight with, don't get one of those. Get an STI. Or there's some decent one, not the Springfield. No, you went from a cheap gun that's not good to an expensive gun that's not good, in my opinion. I've never seen a Springfield 1911 that worked. I've seen a lot of people that say they'll work once they fix this or once they fix that or once they do this. Yeah, I'm sure if you just take the frame and strip everything out and put all Wilson Combat parts in it, it will probably work. But I've literally never seen a Springfield 1911 that works well. And you can say, oh, I went to the range and shot a magazine through it and it worked fine. Slow clap. Talking about like getting one through a course, through a training course, a couple of 1,000 rounds. I've just never seen it. I've never seen one that worked reliably, in my opinion. The one that I may recommend is the new Kimber 2011. I don't think it's going to be as good as an STI, but I think it has the potential to be good and reliable. My 3-year rule. Those still aren't cheap. They're $2,500, but that's cheaper than $4,000. So if you want to stick on that 1911 train, you might look at the new Kimbers. All right, that's top tier. They're also fairly heavy. They're what I carried on duty when I was rocking a full war belt and I could carry my own gun. My current contract, we have to carry the guns provided, which are garbage. But you make do with what you have, just like in the Marine Corps. You make the best with what you have. The Marines aren't known for being great because they have good equipment. They generally have pretty bad equipment. They're known for doing the best with what they have, which sometimes is very little. Where was I? My current carry gun, I would consider this mid-tier. And it's not cheap, but not $4,000. And a carryable weight for me, I encourage you to carry a full-size fighting handgun. See last week as an example. Carry a full-size fighting handgun, one you can actually fight with. Not one that takes you so long to get out of your pocket that the situation is already done. Somebody's already dead. Carry strong sight on your hip. Don't wiener carry for, don't just... You've forgotten the safety rules. You're going to walk around with a gun pointed at your junk. Bad idea. I've talked about that before. I'm not going to talk about that here. Carry a fighting handgun on your hip like a man. Anyway, my general EDC carry gun is a SIG 226, single action only. Now, if you're really dedicated, you want to go double single, that's fine. But a SIG Legion single action only and or the ZevTech variant, which is one of my favorites, single action only. The SIG 226 needs no introduction. Those models, the Legion or the Zev, are going to run you between $1,500 to $2,000. They're not overpriced. They're phenomenal guns. I recently, last year, did some drills getting back into steel challenge shooting, which is like drag racing with a handgun. And I was impressed that the Legion was able to keep up with the STI, and it weighs quite a bit less, is able to keep up with the STI. Anyway, the SIG 226, a phenomenal gun. You got to get one that's cut for an optic in 2025, just unless you have some other reason, like you live in a rainforest, get one that's cut for an optic. Even when I lived in a rainforest, I had a gun cut for an optic. It's just it's 2025. Put an optic on your handgun and learn it and train with it. But the SIG 226 and or the Berettas, the Beretta 92 series. I like the 92 XIs, the one with a thumb safety. I like single action only. I like a thumb safety. I prefer it for fighting. Many people don't. Many people tell you that'll get you killed in the streets. Many people who have never been shot at will tell you that. But I have, and I'm going to tell you, I like a thumb safety, and I like a manual thumb safety, and I like single action only. Why do I want to deal with double action if I don't have to? Now, you may decide to go double single, and that's fine. That's going to open up options. I actually had the patrons vote recently, going down a side rabbit hole here. Stick with me. And they voted, of all the guns I put up there, to use some Patreon money to do some experimenting, to get the Beretta 92 single action only, and I got a variant of that to test. Sadly, I haven't done much except shoot it with the iron sights, which is never going to keep up with a gun with an optic. It's just not. That's one of the reasons I tell you to get an optic. They're better. But I shot at some with iron sights, but they were out of the plates for the optic that I had, and I bought almost the same optic that I had on the SIG 226 because I wanted to compare it apples to apples. How does it stand up to the 226? Well, I haven't been able to do that because Beretta themselves are out of the plate, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere for the footprint, and it's not like some obscure footprint that I'm looking for. So it's just sitting there in a box, which is kind of bugging me. However, I have enough experience with the Beretta 92 to tell you I think you're good either way. Get a good Beretta 92 or a SIG 226. Both have their ups and downs. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. I think the Beretta is a more elegant system. I think it's a more attractive looking gun. I think it has the potential to be a more accurate gun with the factory barrel. But I'm also going to tell you it's more complex and more complicated. Not as much as a 1911, but it's more complicated than a simple tilting barrel system. So I think it's a better system. The SIG 226 is simpler. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But get one and train with one. Those are both some of the best combat handguns ever, period. And I don't know which one's slightly better. If there is one that's slightly better, it's probably a dead even tie, to be honest. But the SIG 226 or the Beretta 92, they're both phenomenal fighting handguns. They're not crazy expensive. They're not budget guns. There's a lot more of the 92s on the surplus market. They were like the gun to have in the 80s and the 90s, and people started thinking that plastic, fantastic polymer striker fires were a good idea for some reason I can't explain. But that means there are a lot of surplus ones or a lot of second-hand ones that are probably just fine because most people don't shoot very much. So you might be able to find a bargain there. And the Beretta is probably going to be easier to find the bargain on. But either one of those guns. And most of them are going to be double single. But if you want to train and learn double single and marry that system, walk down the aisle with it, you can be very good with a double single. I have carried it professionally at different times. The SIG variants and the Beretta I went to war with, double single. They're not my favorite. I don't think it's a good system, but they can be very effective if you train with them. I prefer single action only, and I prefer a manual safety. Call me crazy. The next one we talk about, I'm going to say good value tier. This is where your polymer striker fires come in. I think this is why they took over the market, not because they're better, because they're cheap to produce. It's a piece of plastic, and you got a spring wrapped around a firing pin. But they can be effective. Now, I'm going to make like 60% of the handgun market mad here. If you're a Glock guy, then you're a Glock guy, and you're dyed in the wool, and you've drunk the Glock Kool-Aid, and you just think Glocks are good. And I'm not going to talk you out of it. It's like being in a cult. You're in a Glock cult, and I'm not going to talk you out of it in this episode. I don't think Glock makes the top 10 for good polymer striker-fired handguns in 2025. In the late 90s, sure, they were one of the guns to beat. I don't even think they make the top 10 now. They have the ergonomics of a 2x4 and the trigger of a staple gun. If that's what you're looking for, get a Glock. And a lot of people are. A lot of people are just drink the Glock Kool-Aid. They're a gun that works. If that's your entire criteria, I want a handgun that works. Okay, you don't care what it feels like. You don't care what the trigger's like. You don't care about the ergonomics. Then get a Glock. I'm not gonna talk you out of it here. The OG Glock 17s are fine. I prefer either a Gen 1, which are kind of collector's items, or a Gen 5, or get the Glock equivalent of the 40, whatever they're on now, of a full-size gun. Glock 19s are not full-size fighting handguns. They're, by Glock's own definition, a compact gun. I'm not talking about baby guns today. Get a real gun. Okay, but for actually good guns, this is going to make a lot more people mad. The people that think the guns just randomly go off by themselves. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying I've seen no evidence of it. I've seen no proof of it. I like the M17. I like a manual safety. I think that the 320 is a good gun, but it's kind of a hot rod gun. It's got a very light, crisp trigger with no manual safety, which is easy to shoot, but I don't know that's what I would give a general purpose cop. I just don't. I would give them one with a manual safety, and I would actually spend 5 minutes teaching them how to use it. That said, an M17, the full-size fighting handgun, the military variant, I don't think it just goes off by itself. I don't think it just randomly, spontaneously combusts on its own. I've looked at that. I have one. I've shot it a ton, and I've taken it apart and looked at it, and I don't see how it actually can do that. I know people claim that it can be done, but people claim a lot of stuff. People claim all the time that they've been abducted by aliens. People claim that they've seen Bigfoot. Okay, in my experience, and my looking at that mechanical design, and I'm not an engineer, but I know a bit about guns. I don't see how it just randomly can go off by itself. I do know in my experience, especially from being a cop, that people lie. And I know from my experience from being a cop that cops lie. And it's way more likely that cops lie than that gun randomly goes off by itself. So mid-tier, I'm going to recommend still, call me crazy, the M17, full-size fighting handgun of the U.S. military. I actually got that gun to kind of trash it because I just wanted to shoot the military's new handgun. I didn't think I would like it because I'm not a big fan of polymer striker-fired handguns. But I actually like the M17, so I'm still going to recommend it. Call me crazy. I don't think it's going to randomly go off and shoot you. Now, if you go shoving a gun with no manual safety or without the safety on with a light trigger pointed at your genitals, if you think that's a good idea, then you do you. But I prefer a manual safety, and I'm going to tell you carry it on your hip in a hard holster, a good holster. It's not going to let you get your finger on the trigger or have your finger on the trigger when you reholster or reach the trigger while the gun's in the holster. But you do you. But I think the M17, it's a good gun. Again, I like a manual safety. SIG kind of does the thing on the popularity of the M17 or the M18, which is the compact version, where they call other variants without the safety still the M something. I'm going to tell you get the one with the manual safety, in my opinion. But that gun's got a lot going for it. You can defeat the manual safety, and then it has a decent trigger. And I'm not for carrying a gun with a trigger that light without a manual safety. It's one of the reasons why Glock, their triggers are just so bad. It's kind of hard to accidentally pull one of those. Cops did that too back when they switched from the revolvers. There were still cops carrying revolvers when I was a cop. And when there was a mass switch to semi-autos, a lot of them blamed Glock for just going off on their own, which they didn't, of course. I don't like Glocks, but they don't just randomly go off on their own. But the same claims were made back then. The internet and YouTube wasn't as big, but the same claims were made. You can go look them up just because they were used to a much heavier trigger. Well, the Glock trigger is much heavier and grittier and longer and nastier and more atrocious than a SIG 320 trigger. You can get away with a lot less safety with the Glock. Anyway, I'm going to tell you just get the manual safety. I think the M17 is a good, let's say, value gun. They're not expensive, the M17. Other ones, and there's a ton, this is where the market gets flooded with polymer striker-fired handguns. And I've done whole ones on the best top 5. I'm just going to throw out a few. The HK VP9. It's a good gun. It's a good gun if you just want a gun to get and you don't want to modify it much. You just want to run it the way that it is. Those are good guns. They're one of the best, and I know HK stuff is expensive, but the VP9 is not crazy expensive because it's polymer striker fire. They're cheap guns to make, and even if they mark it up a little bit, it's still fairly affordable, and it's a good gun. The HK VP9, full size, it's a good gun. So, yeah, that's a good one. I would call that a decent value gun. They're not cheap, they're not crazy expensive. The other one I'm going to tell you that's very good is the Walther PDP. The Walther PDP is a good gun. It has a good trigger. It, to my knowledge, they don't make one with a manual safety, but it is what it is. Most polymer striker fires don't have them, but it's a good gun, the Walther PDP. They're very light too, and they kind of look big and bulky and clunky looking. I'm going to tell you they're not. I don't find them to be a very attractive gun, but they are a good gun. They shoot well. They are at this point been out a few years. They're proven. They're reliable, and they actually they're actually pretty lightweight, even though they look big and chunky. The Walther PDP. It's a good gun, and I think it often gets overlooked, but I would definitely put it up there for a good value gun. They're not expensive. All right, now let's go to the budget guns. What's the bare minimum I would feel comfortable if you're like, you got to carry this, and I'm like, fine. I wouldn't be like, that's semi-suicidal. Okay, so Taurus. Taurus has come a long way. A few years ago, I would never recommend a Taurus, but the Taurus G3s, they're definitely completely mediocre. I'm not going to call them a good gun. I'm going to call them a budget gun that works. They're a budget gun. They're a budget gun that works. If you want a budget gun that works, or if that's all the money you have, and you're going to spend the extra money on ammo and training and get a gun that works and get ammo and training, I applaud that. That's an actual clap. Good job. So, on that note, the Tauruses, they're not made in Turkey. They're not made by a bunch of Muslims that would just as soon see your head get chopped off and take your money. They're made in Brazil, and Brazil's not America, but Brazil's not Turkey either, and it's not Croatia. They make Taurus now makes decent guns. Again, there was a time when their quality control, I would say, was subpar, but I don't know, I don't know when the turning point was because I kind of wrote them off for longer than I probably should. But at least the last 3 or 4 years, at least since that, I wouldn't go back and recommend like a Taurus 24/7 or something, but I would recommend a Taurus G3. They're decent guns. They're decent polymer striker-fired handguns, and they're budget guns. And that's really going to be my one pick. I do like Ruger a lot. I like a lot of stuff Ruger does. They make fantastic 22s. They make fantastic rifles. I'm not real hip on their semi-autos, and they just came out with that Glock copy, which is ironically better than a Glock 19, I think, but that's a compact gun. They don't make the full-size version yet. So maybe they will in the future. Maybe they'll make an actual normal-sized handgun, not a baby handgun. But as for right now, there are other ones like their Security 9. I honestly, and this hurts me to say, probably recommend the Taurus over them. Yeah, I guess the Taurus G3 is kind of it for a budget gun. Stay away from the Turk Nasties. It doesn't matter if it looks like an actual handgun and it doesn't work. Like, yeah, Taurus is not going to get you any cool points, but it's probably going to work. So that's the one I'm going to recommend for a budget gun. Get some training, get some good ammo, get some good carry ammo, put it in a good, strong, solid holster on your hip. Carry a decent knife, carry a tourniquet, and above all, be spiritually prepared, be mentally prepared, be physically prepared. It's not just about having a gun on your hip. With that, that's going to bring us to the tactical verse of the day. New King James is normally my go-to. This is from Leviticus 19. You shall not go about as a talebearer among your people, nor shall you take a stand against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. Actually, NIV, I like the translation of this better. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. And the NLT, if this translation is a good one, this really brings home part of what happened in those events I talked about in the opening. Do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I am the Lord. I'm not going to say to be a good Christian you have to carry a handgun. I'm not going to say that. Plenty of good Christian men have been pacifists. Jesus does say, let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. He had 12 disciples. They showed him they had 2 swords. Now, of course, Jesus knew they had sword trade. Jesus knows everything. He says it is enough. So there were Christians there were followers of Christ there that didn't have swords. But it's okay to have a sword. And if you feel called to have a sword, again, if last week didn't shake you up, what's it going to? Come on. Carry a gun on your hip. Swords are not meant for spreading butter on toast. They were swords. Swords are not meant for picking stuff out of your teeth. It's a sword. Swords are meant for fighting. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.